It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. Familiar words from Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities. It's a springboard for understanding what Christian worship is all about. I'm David Bell. Welcome to this final episode in our 12-part series, Leadership Plus, from the kiwiconnexion.nz. Effective church leaders encourage worship. That's obvious. But not all worship is created equal, and that's a problem. Who wants to go to church when no one's needs are really met there? So there are challenges and opportunities ahead for the church, but they present themselves only by careful analysis. There are predictable patterns and cycles. Growth, decline and renewal of congregational life are all constrained by the spectrum of the best to the worst times. Shoddy research will lead us nowhere. Now, here's an example I've heard all too often. Because a congregation is in decline, leaders compare their programs and activities with other neighbourhood churches. For example, St Mary's, which is a big church, has more prayer groups, while St Mungo's has been growing since it instituted the men's Saturday morning breakfast group. It sounds trivial, and it is trivial. But what we do get sucked into thinking is copying others or improving our own activities will make all the difference. So we add more prayer groups and maybe more bacon and eggs or toasted muesli, and that halts the decline, we think, and brings about growth. Well, it's obvious that that ain't going to work. The real issue is understanding what motivates people spiritually. When we can articulate this, then new vision and purpose kicks in. Prayer and social interaction are crucial in building cathedrals of the Christian mind, but they are consequences of the something else of articulated spirituality. We can create an abiding habitat of grace when we see folk yearning for deep and abiding meaning in the best and worst of times. We lead people into becoming the co-creators of meaning and purpose. Christianity isn't just a message for you, it's a message that you become the message. You are the community and you are embedded into the Christian community, which lives out its trust and faith, care and compassion, its justice and mercy. Here's an insight from long ago. Out of the deep history of Christian faith, there is a culture that permeates every other culture. It's its own city, as Augustine called it, in the city of God. There's one key fact about this permeating culture, this city which embeds itself into a congregation. Leslie Newbigin put it rather well. The congregation itself becomes the interpretation of the gospel. We started this Leadership Plus series with that key. The clue to everything best in Christian life was to be found in koinonia, a rich cluster of ways to belong. From koinonia we get two more crucial theologies. We are Christian stewards. Christian stewardship continually renews its vision, lives out a commitment to knowledge, especially to science, in order to create sustainable futures for the generations to come. In a word, the Christian steward is a participatory member of oikumene. That means the whole household of the world, God's household, and it's powerfully inclusive. The poor, the blind, the lame are in it, and so are the lesbians, gays, the bisexuals, and the transgender people. None are excluded. The best and the worst of us all is in there. The only way you can be out of God's household is by excluding yourself. Related to the Christian steward was the act of Christian service. Our lives become important as we serve others. We put others first, learning how to see with and through the eyes of Jesus the Christ. In the trials and tribulations of others, in their best and worst of times, we actually find ourselves. The term for this kind of service is diaconia. There's one final term that we have to consider, and it's all about worship. The term is what we commonly call preaching, but the preachers of the Christian church have given themselves a bad name in the whole household of God. Most of the time we don't practice what we preach, and others see it more clearly than perhaps we do ourselves. So let's rename it and do it a little bit differently as effective leaders. Telling the story is preaching the word. Telling the story is proclamation of the gospel. We could use the Greek term kerygma. So what's worship all about? In a nutshell, gather the people, tell the story, figure out what the next steps are, do them, and bless those doing them in their doing of it. Gather the people, that's the koinonia, the fellowship. Tell the story, that's the worship and its kerygma. Figure out the next steps and do them, that's the service of diaconia. And bless them in their doing of it. That's getting the inclusive economy right for the whole household of God. And to achieve this vision, we have to be able to worship, which is simply giving worth to God. The worship of the congregation, by its signs, symbols, words and actions, makes itself the message. Therefore, in the 21st century, we need to find the ways in which the congregation can interpret itself to the world. Our belonging is to all that is. Our stewardship is for all that is. Our proclamation is inclusive of all. Our economy is for life on this planet itself. Do join me next week as we begin a new series on the art and craft of preaching. And thanks for watching. See you next time.